Welcome to another episode of our video series of the critique of modern systems.
Great to be here.
How are you doing? Ready to get into what feels like a truly fundamental shift in our society?
I am. And you're right, this is a huge one. It's a topic that really affects everyone, whether you're a student, an employer, or just, thinking about your own future. The stakes are incredibly high.
They really are. Today, we're looking at this massive change happening in global higher education. It's a fundamental challenge to the whole university model that so many of us grew up with and relied on.
It is.
Uh,
Okay, let's unpack this.
If we connect this to the bigger picture,
Yeah.
what's fascinating here is how the functions of the university have utterly failed to keep pace with societal evolution.
Right.
And the central problem, it isn't just about technology, it's actually more philosophical. The very concept of what knowledge is, what identity means, what competence looks like, it's all sort of disintegrating within these traditional institutions.
And the last few years just accelerated that. Exactly. Accelerated, but definitely didn't cause it. This reckoning was coming for a long time.
So our mission today is to really synthesize why those two historical pillars of the university, the prestige label and the vocational label, why they're collapsing and what that means for you, for your future, for your career.
And we really have to start with this erosion of authority. It's a kind of a post-truth problem.
Okay.
We live in a society with such decentralized information, so much political polarization, that we've reached a point where reality and perception just can't seem to overlap anymore.
And that creates a ton of, disinformation, especially in adult education, right?
Yeah.
For anyone 17, 18 and older.
Yes. The problem isn't a lack of information. It's everywhere.
Of course.
It's the total absence of reliable frameworks from trusted sources to help you make sense of it all.
It's like that image of a chicken with its head cut off. I hear this from young professionals all the time. They feel like they're just running around with access to everything, but they have no idea where to go or what to do next.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
It creates a crisis of direction.
And the university was meant to be that direction. It used to offer two main functions, two labels.
Right.
The first was that prestigious label from an elite school. The second was the vocational label. You get your degree, you become a doctor, a lawyer.
But that vocational promise is really struggling. It's suffering from just pure market saturation.
There are just too many graduates.
Way too many. The sheer volume of graduates in fields like law or psychology, it's diluted the value proposition to the degree itself. When absolutely everyone have that same professional title, it just doesn't make you unique anymore.
But hold on. Does a degree from, say, a top 5 law school still hold a lot of weight? Is this crisis hitting everyone or just the non-elite schools?
That is the critical question. For now, yes, the prestige factor is still there for a very, very small number of elite institutions.
For now.
Exactly, for now. This raises an important question. For how long can that last? When access to the content from those top schools is globalizing, when you can get a Harvard-level lecture online, the value has to shift, right? It shifts away from just being there to actually mastering the knowledge.
That sets up the skills paradox perfectly. The market has been screaming about this for, 20 years?
At least. Organizations like Davos, with their World Employment Atlas, they've been sending out an SOS signal for 2 decades.
And the data is just staggering.
It is. If you look at the numbers, even in countries with really high unemployment, employers are reporting that they cannot fill 62% of their open positions.
That number is it's shocking. You have people desperate for work and companies desperate for workers at the same time. It's a total disconnect.
It proves the degrees are not providing what industry actually needs.
So the market's priorities have changed.
Aggressively. It's shifting from credentials to competence. Because you can get a credential from anywhere in the world now, employers care less about which university is on your diploma and much more about what knowledge and, crucially, what experience you actually have.
You can see this so clearly with global mobility.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Think about it. A highly qualified academic from one country might face years of regulatory hurdles trying to work abroad. It can be incredibly difficult. Now, contrast that with a skilled tradesperson, a great plumber, an HVAC technician. If they're competent and can speak the language, they can find well-paying work almost anywhere.
Because the skill itself is in demand.
The skill is in demand, and the supply of that functional qualitative skill is critically low globally. The paper matters less. The ability to do the job means everything.
And technology is just throwing fuel on this fire, right? The pandemic accelerated a shift that was already planned.
It put it into warp speed, We were already talking about blended learning using an LMS with some physical classes. But now you have institutions like Stanford putting whole degree programs online with real diplomas at the end.
So the status of being on campus, that whole experience, it's not the main function anymore.
Not at all. Anyone with an internet connection can attend a top university from a small town. The prestige of the content is starting to eclipse the prestige of the location.
Which forces us to look at the internal flaws of the system. I mean, many of these newer institutions, these foundation universities you mentioned in the sources, they seem to have been built on a really flawed premise.
A critical point. So many of them prioritized marketing and recruitment, just getting bodies in seats over, building strong academic programs, or real industry connections.
They thought a big marketing budget could substitute for quality.
Precisely. But their competition is no longer just the university down the road.
It's global now.
It's Cambridge, it's MIT, and it's these new online platforms. They need a severe course correction. And that has to start with fixing their view on research.
You mean the balance between research and teaching?
Exactly. A huge flaw is treating academics just as teachers to generate credits cheaply. In a better model, a researcher applies for funding for a specific applied project like developing polymer chemistry for space textiles. Their main job is research, and their teaching enriches that.
But here, the tendency is often just to assign heavy teaching loads based on who is available, not based on a real strategy for the program or the needs of the region.
And that stars the University of Innovation. It also leads to this incredible stagnation in how things are taught. The pedagogy is, well, it's shocking.
How so?
You can walk into some lecture halls today and see instructors using methods, literally content on overhead projectors that date back to 1987.
I remember those projectors. But you're right, the information in a standard lecture is almost always available online and often in a much better, more engaging format.
Right. A university has to offer more than just delivering content you can Google.
It has to offer something much more sophisticated.
Which brings us to what the market actually values now: cognitive leadership.
What do you mean by that?
It's not about memorizing facts. It's about your ability to process, interpret, and form a synthesized viewpoint on really complex data.
So for you listening, it's the difference between knowing a fact like there are 10 million displaced people in this country,
Right.
and having the mental tools, the methodology to analyze that fact through economic, social, and political lenses to develop a coherent approach. That methodology is what the university was supposed to give you.
That was its core mission. But instead, policy often drove this rapid, poorly planned expansion. The sources mentioned establishing hundreds of new institutions, often just for short-term regional economic goals.
Just to bring students to a town to spend money at cafes and dorms.
Exactly. It's an economy based on student traffic,
Yeah.
not on creating sustainable knowledge, which is why we have to challenge the entire structure, even the four-year degree.
Why are degrees 4 years long?
It's an archaic model. We need a radical change. Imagine this: 3 months of intensive, focused education, followed by 9 months working in that industry. And you start this in your first year.
That would be a game changer. Students are prepared for real-world problems immediately.
And it forces the academics to stay deeply involved in their sector. No more using teaching slides from 1987.
While the traditional system struggles with this, new models are already rising up.
Powerful ones. These specialized platforms are emerging as, basically, sophisticated adult universities. They offer high-quality, high-production value content. Think of it like a Netflix documentary, but for learning.
And they come with networking opportunities built in.
Which is crucial. Traditional universities can't really match that level of quality control. They can't pick and choose only the very best professors from around the world and then package their knowledge in a way that's cinematic and engaging for a voluntary audience.
And that audience is only getting more demanding. You just have to look at the next generation.
Absolutely. The 12 to 17-year-old demographic, they're already learning incredibly complex things using platforms like Minecraft. They expect gamification, rewards, cinematic quality, and everything.
So the core of the crisis is really this. How can a traditional system, with its outdated methods, possibly compete with the immersive, personalized learning that young people are already doing for fun?
The simple answer is it can't, not without a complete transformation.
So what does this all mean for you? It seems the primary shift is that education has to move away from just being a credentialing machine. It needs to become an optimized, lifelong experience focused on how to think. It's about the methodology, not the masthead on the building.
We are right at the beginning of building that new future. The universities that survive will be the ones who realize their value isn't in physical campuses anymore. It's in who can build the most robust, engaging learning architecture. This raises an important question. If universities become obsolete as simple knowledge transmitters, what is the one thing they must offer to justify their existence in the next decade? Hint, it's not the diploma.
A profound challenge to a very old institution. Thank you for helping us explore this massive systemic shift today.